And we're live. Phil Tarrant, Tom Panos, Real Estate Exposed. Tom, we've got a special guest today as well. Paul Glossop, Pure Property Investment. How are you, mate?
Good. A blast from the past. A blast from the past. In fact, I would go as far as saying it looks like you're at the same spot you were last time Paul was on. Am I right? Or yep?
Not far away. We're actually, we do a, Paul's a real estate celebrity, Tom. I think he might be even a bigger celebrity than you. He wrote a book once about the Surfer's Guide to Property Investment. So once a year, he shouts me for a couple of tins of stag chili and some nachos, takes me on a surf trip. That's what we're on right now, mate. So, yeah, we're about 15 months on. And what's happened in the market in that time, I think we've all been great predictors of how great real estate is in Australia.
Yeah, well, listen, I'm really keen to catch up with Paul and find out, like, in his eyes, what's hot and what's not, and what the year was like in what he was investing in with his clients, and also what the forecast is for, early next year. I mean, there's just a lot happening in media in real estate at the moment. APRA conversations, they took effect in December, on November 1, the APRA ruling where people, essentially what they're doing is they're borrowing a little bit lower than what they could have before. And interest rate chatter. Everyone thought it would be 2024. Now they're saying, oh, it might be earlier. And there's a lot of stock on the market. Paul,
we'll get in that, Tom. Maybe before we get into maybe a sort of 15 months on and we can pick Paul's brain. Mate, you've been in Melbourne. I saw you on the television the other day. Looked like a tough auction you had down there at the block.
It was the easiest auction I've ever done. So the long and short of it is that I went to Melbourne. I had property number 4. I had a flight at 6 o'clock to return. My auction didn't start till pretty much the end of the day. I was nervous about missing the flight because Sydney, Melbourne, it's not like the old days. You can get 1 or 2 flights a day at the moment. I'd moved my auctions from Saturday to Sunday, so I had to get home. The first flight out the next day was at 8 a.m., which would mean you'd land at 9:30 if that was on time. And then essentially by the time you get out of the airport, get your car, go to your first auction. It was very nervous. So all I did is I went to, and this is a big learning tip to everyone that's watching, auctioneers should be working on the buyers before the auction starts, right? If you think about it, a real estate agent works on the vendor before the auction to get a realistic reserve. A real estate agent works on a buyer before the auction to build a connection and to educate them up to paying a specific price on auction day. And as far as I'm concerned, I take a leaf out of real estate agents' books and I work on the parties I'll be dealing with, which is the buyers, before the auction. So all I did, guys, was I told them the truth. I said, listen, I've got a 6 o'clock flight. I'm going to ask you to consider giving me a fair and reasonable start. And I'm also going to ask you to go up in increments that are fair and reasonable at a level that you think is good value for you. And let's not play games. And I said, I'll make a point of making it really obvious who you are when you're bidding. So if you want to be on TV, I'll make a point. And anyone goes and watches the auction that I did, it was over in about 2 minutes. Everyone else's auctions took half an hour, low bids. There's a guy that was putting in odd numbers with cents in his bids, right? I just went in and it went from 3.3 to 3,930,000 in 2 minutes. And the guys that I were representing were not one of the favorites. They were far from it. In fact, they were always talked about as definitely not going to be winning the block. They ended up getting second prize. They actually made 540 grand. And I just think it's a big learning that don't underestimate what happens before an auction. All right. So that was it. Good experience.
The question I've got around that, Tom, and I think the learning for everyone, So you've used your own environmental situation or circumstance to shape a particular outcome that you wanted. That was to get to the airport as quickly as possible with the biggest price you could do. Well, that really is an art form, to be able to understand and read the play and use the sort of environmental factors which, might be shaping you to actually, maneuver something in a way that works for your benefit. The same thing would apply in real estate sales.
100%. I mean, you want to talk about environmental factors that can help you. Like, let's face it, if someone's got a second inspection on a property today with a buyer that's seriously thinking about buying that property, why wouldn't you ensure that when you get them through at 4 o'clock today, that outside the property, you've got another buyer coming to inspect it at 4:15? Right? It shows social proof that others want it. It shows scarcity. Like, if you don't buy it, there's someone else here that might, look at putting an offer in. It shows that it's the kind of property that has got interest in it, right? So smart real estate agents actually use environmental factors or create conditions to actually suit the purpose. This doesn't mean you've got to lie. This means that you're using theatre to create urgency when there may not be urgency there, right? The other thing I do, guys, you'll notice, and I do it all the time, I say at the start of an auction, no one asked me during my auction, is it on the market? No one asked me. And they asked everyone else. And the reason why is I tell people, ladies and gentlemen, I'm letting you know, don't wait till you hear the words on the market. They're not in the act. They're not in any terms and conditions. When I'm at the number that I can sell at, you'll see me get ready. So I don't actually use the words. And the problem is that if people are going to sit down and only wait till bidding when the property's on the market, like, no one's going to bid, right? No one's going to bid. They want to hear the words. And you'll quite often, and there was an example in one of the auctions, the auction number 5, where a guy says, is it on the market? The guy goes, no, it's not on the market. And he turns around and he says, well, what's the point of me bidding then? All I'm going to do is push the price up, right? What's the point of me bidding? So, yeah, listen, you can tell that I'm keen about salesmanship. That's what I make a living out of, teaching agents how to sell. And I've got to tell you guys, I reckon all of a sudden, being a good salesperson might matter again, because
I think you're absolutely right, Tom. And I imagine, no doubt, one of your biggest frustrations is at auction having to deal with buyers agents like Paul Glossop over here, who thinks he knows what he's talking about. But again, like, no doubt, Paul, you use environmental factors, reading the play, understand the situation, manufacturing something which enables you to get a better outcome for your buyers.
But I can tell you, Phil, I would prefer getting a bid from a buyer's agent than a non-buyer's agent. And the reason why is buyer's agents actually know the process, right? Number one. Number two is they don't have fear, right? And I think a lot of the times fear creates overwhelm in people, right? And often they don't see, a buyer doesn't see a good opportunity when it's there because they're clouded by fear. But on the same token, I also know with buyer's agents, man, they might be bidding really, really hard, but I know there's a number that they stop at. And it goes like that. Whereas with a non-buyer's agent, I noticed that they might be bidding hard, and you know that there's still a lot of bids in them because the tone and momentum of them. But I think Paul's nodding because he can relate to the fact that he does street theatre. He will create the impression to everyone in the crowd, we're going to keep going for this. And that does scare a lot of the people out there. They begin to say, what's the point of keep bidding? This guy's not going to stop. But I've also learned when they stop, it's a hard break stop. It's not like, oh, should I pay another 5? Nah, they've worked out what they're going to do before the day. And that's the advantage of having a professional buyer's agent, because they don't have logic clouded by emotion.
I agree completely, mate. And I think that's where you no doubt have probably seen that side of things, Tom, in the sense that over the last 5, 8, 10 years, as far as buyers agents coming into your auctions, no doubt a lot more. And Phil, you would have you've worked with buyers agents for your investments in the past and spoken with umpteenth amounts of them. Is that
every buyer's agent in Australia?
Yeah, well, but ultimately that is our job is to really understand, well, where do we see value? Where is our client's budget sit? And to your point, Tom, is the fact that once we go in there, our job is to make sure that we should have the perception of we're not going to stop bidding until we stop bidding. And really, that's our job, is to make sure that people think, well, if there's other bidders in there, they should think that we don't have any infinite amount of stopping on our checkbook until the dollar comes. And literally, from my side of things, it typically comes down to either a $500 or $1,000 point, and from that point we're out. But we should be pretty aggressive. And to your point, mate, is that it should be perceived to other emotional buyers, i.e. owner-occupiers who are looking at that as their next 20 or 30-year home, that the buyer's agents are there sitting there saying, well, regardless of what you put down, we're going to keep going until we're not going. And you would have seen a lot of that, no doubt, at the auction at the block, is that there was a fair few buyers agents that I know of personally who were there and did a stellar job. There was a few there that got really good outcomes for their buyers, in the sense that they made sure that their job was done. And when they were out, they're out. It's game over. And as an auctioneer, you'd probably know full well that if you've got a buyer's agent who says I'm out, they're out. You're not going to work on them any further, because you know that that's the end of the road.
100%. When they're out, they're out. Whereas with a normal buyer, man, when they say they're out, there's a saying, buyers are liars. And I don't think it's because they're lying. I think it's just they get emotional. And what they do is they say to themselves, what's another 10 grand? Am I back on realestate.com tonight? And then they'll hear the auctioneer say, are you going to lose this home that's $2 million for 10 grand? And they think that's a good point. And they bid again. But I'm just curious. And by the way, Paul, what's happening in Sydney in the buyer agent world is, I don't even know whether I can announce it. I think it's public now.
Don't do it if you're unsure, Tom. There is literally hundreds of thousands of people watching us, mate.
Listen, I'm unsure. They're two very high-profile agents in the eastern suburbs who have worked there for a very long time, the Double Bay area, have actually exited real estate sales agency and actually set up a buyer's agency. And both these two gentlemen are, they're very high-profile real estate people. I think part of it is that they believe that it is a field that is growing as a category, that more and more buyers are looking at engaging a buyer's agent. We're seeing that happen in Sydney. Melbourne's probably a few steps ahead of Sydney in the world of buyer's agents. If you actually, as you said, the block, pretty much every buyer on my property that I was auctioning was a buyer's agent, except for two. So there was 8 registered, two weren't, 6 were. So in Melbourne, it's a pretty progressed, industry now.
So the question for you, Tom, and this is Real Estate Exposed, so we're supposed to be a little bit pointy.
It's public, by the way. Someone that I know has just said it is now public, so I can say it. Barry Goldman and Mark Goldman from Sotheby's have now set up a buyer's agency.
Well, this makes my question all the more loaded then when I'm going to ask you, it is Real Estate Exposed. We talk about the stuff that other people want to talk about and can't. Do real estate agents get to a point where they get sick of real estate sales and go, it's easier on the other side, I could probably make a few more bucks without all the stress and hassle? Thoughts? Discuss.
I've seen that happen, because there's a few people that I know that struggled in real estate sales and maybe think that, it's not me, it's the job I'm working, or the office, or whatever they say. So I think there's a possibility that is the case. But I've got about, in the real estate gym has got lots of buyers agents, and I do some coaching one-on-one with a few buyers agents. And I have to say to you that as far as I'm concerned, if you can't crack it in real estate sales, you're going to struggle being a buyer's agent, because there's a big sale in a buyer's agent. Think about Paul, what Paul's got to do. Paul is sitting there with a client, and what they're doing is they're buying Paul. They buy Paul, right? They buy a promise that he is going to solve their problem. Whereas, for instance, a buyer buying a house, they buy an actual house. They're actually exchanging money with a house. With Paul, they're saying, hey, we believe that you are going to find us a home faster. It's going to be a better home, and it's going to be at a better price than if we didn't engage you, right? And what they're doing is they're buying that promise off you, right? And they're paying 2% or 1.5%. The fees are basically exactly the same as real estate sales.
How would have you gone in real estate sales?
But it's the irony is Tom, and to your point, Phil, is I've never worked in real estate sales. I mean, I came from a different fraternity, but I completely agree with you, Tom, in the sense that the struggle is very real. You know, depending on whether you're buying an investment or whether you're buying an owner-occupied property for a client, the reality is it's still the same outcome you're trying to achieve. Is a better outcome than someone can achieve by themselves, whether it's quicker or at a better price or handling the entire process. It's high pressure, and there's a lot of emotion involved, and there's a lot of there is ultimately a lot at stake. If we don't get the outcome right, it comes back to us. As much as we can say, well, hey, it just didn't work out. I mean, ultimately, that the person who's buying the property or wants to buy the property, they want to find someone to blame if it doesn't go the way they want, as opposed to if they're buying the property themselves, they blame themselves. And as a sales agent, especially if you're taking a property at auction, you can always fall back on the fact that, well, you know, an auction is the ultimate way to figure out what people are prepared to pay on the day. And if you've got a quorum of people, i.e. more than one person bidding at a property, then you basically are saying that is the price that the market is prepared to pay. Whereas as a buyer's agent, rather, it is ultimately, you've got to say, well, here's where we see value, and here's where we're going to suggest that you stop bidding, or we put out a maximum price point. And it's going to be that way, you know, regardless whether in a hot market and a ridiculously hot market like we are right now, or whether it goes into a balanced market or a buyer's market. We've still got our neck on the line to say, well, here's where we see value in the property.
Hey, quick question, Tom, and sort of connected in with this. You mentioned the term street theatre, and I think the best real estate practitioners, and I think also the best salespeople, have a really comfortable relationship with theatre. They understand how to use theatre to cultivate a more effective sales process or campaign. I've met a lot of real estate agents, Tom, and I wouldn't expect to see them sort of treading the boards at the local theatre. They're sort of quite introspective, and they're not sort of big in that regards. But yeah, as a real estate professional, and I'll talk about Tom as well on the buy and sell side, how do you actually get good at the theatre bit of real estate? Because I know as a buyer and a seller, real estate or otherwise, any sort of transaction you operate within, if it is fun and if it is entertaining and there is just a bit of an X factor to it, it's a much better outcome for everyone.
So my view is that if you're in business, you're in show business, right? Because they're watching. Everyone's watching. You're on audition. You're doing an audition. And in fact, every time you're actually in a workplace scenario, whether you're showing a property, whether you're doing an open for inspection, what you're doing is, apart from doing the job, you're giving people an interview of what you're like if they want to engage you, right? So you need to take that into account. And what I mean by that is, and I tell, guys, I tell every real estate agent, what if you were at an open for inspection and you treated every person that came through as if they were a potential vendor? Because real estate agents are obsessed with finding sellers, right? So I say to them, what if you assumed that every person that walked into your open home was interviewing you because they were thinking of selling? How would you act and behave? Would you sit there and would you smile? Would you look them in the eye? Would you pay attention to the detail? Would you be over courteous? Or would you, if you didn't, would you sit there, which many of them do, Friday night, big drink nights, Saturday, tired, lower energy level, tens of buyers coming through open. Yeah, mate, have a look through. Yeah, no, all good, right? So you've got to understand, they're watching you. And not only that, they're not only watching you physically now, they're actually watching you digitally now. They're watching everything you do. They're watching what you post on LinkedIn. They're watching what your website says. They're looking at the reviews. They're looking at the reviews that people are leaving you. So I think it's super critical, whether it's real life or online life, that you understand if you're in business, you're in the business of show business. And that basically means that you need to up your ante. And, you can't get away with, Phil. If you turn around and say, man, it's just not me. I just want to do my job and that's it. I get that noble view that you don't want to make a big scene about it. But the problem is you don't want to become Australia's best secret agent, right? You want the world to know you, right? Because that's how you get business. And I'm sure that Paul, one of the ways that Paul gets business is he doesn't open up, the white pages. I don't even think if that exists anymore, but he doesn't ring up, a phone book saying, hey, it's Paul here. I'm a buyer's agent. Can I help you? No. It's not a telephone prospecting game. It's a game of recommendation. It's what people are saying to their friends and family and associates about the work that Paul has done for them. So it does matter.
Yeah, mate, that's what we've built our business on, to be completely honest with you. I think you'd probably attest to it, Tom, in the sense that if you talk to any of your budding real estate gym, any subscribers or anyone who's been working with you for a matter of months or years, is that it comes down to it's a profession and industry that if you want to succeed and you not only want to make money, but you also want to be proud of what you do on a day in day out basis, is that you are a professional. And to the true term of that, you have to treat yourself and what you do as a day in day out basis as a professional role, and you need to portray a professional attitude and an overview of everything you do, from the moment you pick up the phone to what you wear to what you say to how you speak to your vendors, to your buyers, to your essentially to your conveyancers, your solicitors, to the building and pest inspectors. Your reputation is absolutely everything. And I think anyone who makes it in the game over a prolonged period of time realizes that you genuinely have to be good at what you do and also a good person in everything that you do as well. It's not that complicated, but it is very, very tiring if you choose to say that you're going to be on every time you say that I'm working, you're on.
Yeah, and speaking of professionalism in real estate, Tom, I know I like to put my flag up as just a humble journalist who talks to people who operate inside of real estate. But the three of us, when we all got together 15, 16 months ago, it was probably August 2020. And prior to that, Tom, myself and you, when we sort of entered this COVID-19 pandemic, I think we were very considered in our commentary around what would happen with real estate. And Paul talks about reputation. Paul talks about continuity and consistency. And these are absolutely fundamental. But I think the three of us, and we all have, a reasonable voice in real estate. Yours is very large, Tom. We all pretty much picked the play from the absolute get-go. I'm pretty happy with where we are when we go back to Paul to August 2020. You were talking about take it easy, steady as she goes. We're going to get a bit of a bull run here, and we're smack bang in the middle of that now.
We're probably close to the end of it where we came. I mean, to be completely honest from myself, probably a little bit unexpected as far as how quick and how aggressive it went. But we were talking at the time, I think, on what the previous 3 or 4 recessions and also major impacts to the Australian and also global economy had right back to the 80s. And the following 5 years showed something in the vicinity of 33, 34% capital growth over the preceding 5 years over every one of those 3 or 4 major impacts from the 80s to where we are now. And the reality is we probably saw the vast majority of that in a 12 to 18 month period. It's probably a bit quicker than I personally would have forecasted. But that being said, we've got a lot of happy investors who have taken heed to that advice.
Paul, what's your feeling? You're studying the markets closely for the clients you're representing. If we were looking at a clock and 12 is the top of the market, right? Where do you think that the hand is right now on the clock?
If I'm looking nationally, I think we're past 12. If I'm truly looking nationally, but if I drill it down to more state and then city based, I think we're probably getting to a much more of a normal Australian market where you're just not going to see this same 20 to 30% uplift on an annual basis. I mean, we saw literally only a couple of days ago, Brisbane just showed its strongest month of growth as a month in October in almost 20 years, since I think it was November 2003, in its month of growth. So if I'm looking at Brisbane, if I start from the East Coast, Brisbane as a market, I think we're probably entering into what will be heady boom days in that greater Southeast Queensland market. It's already happening. I think it's probably anywhere between 8 and 9 o'clock in Brisbane. Buying is still very good. As much as it seems very expensive and very hard to get in, I think there's still a lot more that'll go there in that greater market. I think the Sydney and the greater eastern seaboard markets are probably sitting anywhere between 10 and 12 o'clock, and possibly a bit past that. But in saying that, I think we've got to be conscious of the saying, yeah, if we're past 12, does it mean we're all of a sudden seeing a downturn market? I don't necessarily consider that. And speaking with a couple of the best agents in Sydney, literally in the Sutherland Shire area, literally, I think a day and a half ago, speaking about a couple of properties which were in that $3 to $5 million mark, they're talking about the fact that they're expecting, and they are all of a sudden now seeing that, auctioneers and agents are entering into what is deemed to be normal territory, where they're going to have to work. They're not just going to have to list, they're going to have to work. And that market will see that. People will still want value, but the good properties will sell, and they'll sell at a decent price. And I don't think we're going to see, with the changes to APRA and these talks about higher interest rates and fixed rates going up over the last couple of weeks and also the last couple of days, that it's all of a sudden going to see this mass exodus. We've got a lot that's going to happen in this economy in the next 12 months.
So are we moving into a market that you prefer as a buyer's agent rather than the market?
Yeah. Unequivocally. And I could probably attest to sales agents. I think they'll probably say, look, bring on what is deemed to be a bit more of a normal market, because they know that they're going to have to work hard, but they'll also get results in areas where others can't necessarily achieve the same results if they're working hard as well. So if I'm looking at Melbourne, I think Melbourne's probably got a bit more in it versus where Sydney sits because of what's happened over the last 12 months, 18 months. And then further over towards Adelaide, Perth, I think those markets have probably got a bit more consistency over the next 3 or 4 years. So still sitting at that 9, if not 10 o'clock market. That's where probably those markets sit as well.
Yeah. Well, I think guys, like I've been auctioning every day for weeks now, because I haven't got, and can't fit all on Saturdays. And I have to say to you, I just think what's happened is we've been on a freeway doing 160 k's an hour for a while, and what we've done is we've slowed up to 120. And in the process, what's happening is everyone's sort of saying, oh, that's it, the market's stopped. It's actually pretty okay at the moment, right? Like everything seems to be selling. It's just that the depth of buyers has weakened, but you still have 3 or 4 front runners on every property. But Paul, I'd be interesting to get your view on this, because the agents I'm speaking to are telling me every day they are having new buyer inquiry coming in from people who have just got into the country because of the lockdowns. And that, these people are people that are highly skilled, coming from senior roles, and are financially capable of buying upmarket real estate. And the only thing that's been stopping them is the lockdown and the international closures to the borders. But now, we're seeing hundreds, if not thousands, of people every day coming in. Very few are going into hotel quarantining. They're coming straight. They're going to their home, self-isolating and picking up the pieces. And one of the first things they're doing is, we need to buy a home. These people weren't in the marketplace, and now all of a sudden they are. So I reckon the demand and supply equation might actually, I know we've had a lot of stock come on the market, but there's a few buyers that have dropped off because they got fed up with the prices, but there's a new set of buyers that are coming in. So you got a little bit of a balancing out, Paul. And I reckon, November, December is shaping up to be a great time to buy real estate, because there's a bit of stock on the market, But yeah, what's your feeling, January through to March, April next year?
It's rare. I think the untested part of what's happened over the last 2 years, which to be fair is completely untested as well, is going to come into the fold, where especially in the markets which are, call call it Sydney and Melbourne, who are probably going to lead the country in the overseas international migration spots because of vaccination rates and essentially border rules and border regulations. I think we're going to see this space where we're either going to see people come in cashed up, finance ready and buying, or we're going to see that medium to high end rental market is going to absolutely continue on its massive upward trajectory, which it already is seeing. As much as the data might not support it holistically, we're seeing huge amounts of rental increases as far as dollar value. Vacancy rates are essentially at the lowest rates we've seen more or less forever in the freestanding housing space especially. But I think that's a space which is probably untested. So as much as people might be getting a bit trepidatious to saying, oh, did I miss the boat as far as selling is concerned, I think buyers are now looking at it in these last couple of months, and probably for the next 1 or 2 months, is that you've seen a lot of this existing stock come to the market, but we're going to now start to see this interstate and overseas migration aspects start to come into the fold. I think 2020 is going to really be the scene where you get these cashed up expats who are coming back to live here because they know they can do their high paid profile role here, and they might be the ones who are picking up these decent properties in good areas quite quickly. So I think for me, that's the wild card. That's the joker in the pack at the moment.
What was the name of the book that you wrote?
Surfer's Guide to Property Investment.
So, I mean, you're a surfer yourself, and you're obviously out there with your mate Taryn on a surf trip. Are you
word lightly?
Associate.
Associate.
Associate, colleague.
Reluctant associate.
Are your clients surfers or not necessarily?
They're a broad church, to be honest with you. I think I've got probably 30% of our clients, ironically, are actually expats based in Asia or North America or Europe. And then we've got a vast range of from defence through to PAYGs through to business owners. So clients of ours are literally just a very, very broad walk of life.
You like buying at auction, or you prefer buying before auction?
I just detest it, mate. And no offence to yourself, but it's because you guys like you do your job too well. Our job is to minimise competition in what we do, and auctions ultimately are only going to benefit essentially a vendor. So we try to avoid auctions as much as we can.
Do you will you look at an auction property when you're looking at real estate and try and buy beforehand, or do you just rule out auctions in total?
100%. If we see it's going to auction, whether it's commercial or resi, we will most certainly push to try and get it before it pushes to auction, especially in these types of markets.
Yeah. And may I ask you, right now, what part of Australia have you got the most demand from buyers? Where are they looking?
Hands down, unprompted. If I'm asking people, what are you trying to do? And granted, the majority of our clients are looking to invest. If I'm asking people, what do you want and where do you want to invest, without telling them any of the data and what we see is actually happening, we will absolutely get, hands down, probably 70 to 80% of people talking about Southeast Queensland at the moment. A smaller portion talking about the east coast of Australia, probably from the Tweed down to the Mornington Peninsula, and then another probably 10% talking about the Perth market at the moment.
Yeah. And your view on the Zoom phenomenon and the office worker and the exodus of inner city people. There was a period of time where people turned around and said, you know what, I don't have to be going into the office as much. I might have a look at what I can do to have a good lifestyle and move further out. What's your view on that? Are the cities going to get packed again or not?
I absolutely think that whole aspect of where things were, call it 2 years ago, are going to go back to pretty close to normal in the sense of where the demand comes in. I think for the medium to higher paid workers, whether they're corporate, whether they're business owners who have been established in their businesses and realise that they're running what might be an e-commerce or a remote business, I think there will be a genuine permanent shift that'll flux anywhere between 1 and 3 days a week from a remote position to 2, possibly 3 days a week into what is a head office or a corporate need, to make sure that the culture and the demand and what happens in a business still consistently generates that way. And you probably could attest to that, Phil, in the way that you run your businesses. You've got a lot of divisions, and you know that certain people work better and the business operates better when there's collaboration, and other people need to probably be at home. If not, they can be completely remote. And I don't doubt you're probably seeing that shift in some of your employees now.
Yeah, well, I think Bernard Salt, Tom, who I'm sure you're familiar with, demographer, he spoke about this shift at the sort of first round of COVID, and you've got to put it into context and a perspective. We're all knowledge worker type people, and that some would argue that's a fortunate position to be in. Some people would argue otherwise, but we can largely do a lot of our jobs without being wed to a particular office. But you need to remember the majority of Australia don't have that privilege. They need to be in a setting where work takes place or work is undertaken. But there is a shift of, I think it was between sort of 5 to 15% of people who have the capacity to actually work in an area which is not considered a domiciled head office or an office location they need to go to. So I think it's fundamentally changed. I think a lot of organizations, and I think about our own here at Momentum Media, everyone is talking about, and no doubt every single real estate agent or principal's heard about this term at the moment, about the Great Resignation, where it's happening in America, less so in Australia, but this idea that come the end of Christmas and New Year's, and when people come back into the office, because of the COVID experience, people are going to reassess and reanalyze what they want to be doing with their lives and how they want to be doing it. And people are going to be seeking a new job. So in America, they're telegraphing like upwards of 50% of people are going to look for a new job in the new year. Now, there's a lot of people inside of Australia who are saying, okay, well, in America, working conditions probably aren't as good as what they are in Australia. They have different leave policies, they have different payment policies, all this sort of stuff. But here in Australia, and if you're a business owner, you probably need to listen to this, is that if you haven't embraced some idea of shaping your workplace for the modern workforce, you're probably going to fall into the bucket of people are going to look for jobs elsewhere. However, if you are a workplace who has embraced flexibility, who have changed your mindset and approach to or thinking towards whether or not someone can work from home or not work from home, and whether or not they're going to be as productive as they do that, if you haven't made that shift, I'd be really looking at that right now, because you're probably going to fall into that bucket where people go, you know what, I like the company, not very flexible, I want to find something else. And you want to retain your staff as quickly and as easily as possible. You need to, Tom, you've probably gone through the process around recruitment. It is a headache and you want to try and avoid it. So keep your people. So if you need to reassess the environment they operate within, I'd be doing it right now, mate.
Yeah, well said. I need to check those stories about the Great Resignation, because I think I've seen this happening in Australia now. I've seen. I mean, it is the time of the year where people start shifting shop and opening up new offices and moving. Right, we're already seeing that happen. But I think, it's really clear. Today, I was having coffee with a guy that told me he's just resigned from his work. This guy would have an IQ of over 140, highly intelligent, but he's one of these guys that, he makes me look like a very bad dad. He's just obsessed with playing with his young kids, right? And he's highly intellectual in the work that he does. And he's resigned and he's been snapped up straight away at more money. And I said to him, why did you leave? And he says, I had an employer who basically thought that if you're not at work, you're bludgeon. And that's not the case with me. He's an analyst. He doesn't need to have a sales manager hitting him on the shoulder. Go on, go get him, Tiger. Knew his job. So it became very obvious to me. Here's a classic example of talent that's been acquired by an organization that allows flexibility. And what has stayed, they're going to end up recruiting someone in his old job that might not be as good, but will come into the office every day. So I think in a year or 2 years' time, we might end up having the creative organizations that were flexible having the talent, and talent creates better solutions, better work, and better products and services for the marketplace. They make better decisions, as bad as it sounds, better capable people create better results. And that you'll have other organizations that will say, nah, 9 to 5 in the office. The gap might end up getting big between organizations. So I'm going to follow that one.
I think
through.
the gap's going to get very wide, Tom. And it's going to be, my job is really to narrate this sort of stuff and how it changes. Some really good comments coming through there, Tom. And I want to pick up some questioning, that good sort of line of questioning you had with Paul just beforehand around the realities of operating as a buyer's agent. This is Real Estate Exposed. Paul, what is the question you most hate from clients as a buyer's agent? You must get plenty of them, but what is it really?
It's pretty easy to answer, to be honest with you, because it's funny when everyone asks me as the main person that I people or clients are speaking to when they want to engage us is what sets us apart, which wouldn't be too different to if you're engaging a sales agent in a particular area. Is that why should I go with you versus someone else? And you mentioned it right at the start of the intro, Tom, in the sense that the job that we have and the job that I've found that I've had personally as running a buyer's agency that consists of not just me, but a number of people who sit within our company, is that we always and absolutely unequivocally are trying to focus purely and utterly on the outcome. And reviews, for me, is what should speak louder than anything else, is ultimately what other people say about our business, which we can't doctor, we can't foster, we can't collaborate. If people come and give us a review as far as the experience they've had with our company, that's the part which I always say hands down. And it's a tough thing to be able to say, because if you asked me that question 7 or 8 years ago when I was first starting our business, is that if I went and lent on our reviews, they don't exist, or they might be 1 or 2, and then you can say, well, if you've got a handful of reviews, then you can say, yeah, look, you've just gone and gotten your friends, family, and everyone else to go and put a 5-star review and talk about whatever they want to talk about. But when you've got 50, 60, 70, 80 reviews that sit there out in the open, that's what I'll try to refer to. But if you come to that question, what I dislike most is that, ironically, I don't like to try and sell what we do better than other people. I like to try and sell what we do in a conversation with people, because that's the outcome that we're trying to achieve. But if people want to go and get their third-party endorsement, that's got nothing to do with what I said, then saying go and search it, figure out what other people are saying about us, because for me that speaks far louder than what I could ever say.
Yeah, look, consumerism. I think at the end of the day, it's got to the stage where the website a person has doesn't matter, where the material you hand over, the proposal you hand over, the beautiful box with the ribbon doesn't matter. What they care about is, what have other people said about you that you've done business with very recently? And it matters 3 times more if that person is friend or family, because we love recommendations from people that we trust. I mean, Paul, I have to tell you, no matter what product or service I use, if it's come from a mate that says to me, mate, trust me, this guy's amazing, right? I don't sit there comparing prices. I'm already pre-sold, right? The sale's done by the other party, the third party, right? And in fact, I get a little bit nervous when I meet someone that actually oversells and is a little bit over enthusiastic. I start to think, man, are they real, or have they just put it up a notch here now and put a bit of a facade? I much prefer to get it from a person that's a third party, doesn't have any financial interest in the decision, right? That's what I prefer. So I get the whole thing with, is it Google reviews that you mainly focus on?
Yeah, mate, yeah, absolutely. For us, Google reviews, we actually were focusing on Facebook reviews as a company initially, and we did pivot to Google reviews just because I feel like that is something that is probably a bit less social media orientated, which in turn hopefully means that, yeah, and it is. It generally is more ubiquitous in the industry, I feel. But regardless, endorsement is endorsement, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. I agree with you, Tom, is the fact that if it's someone I know, I'd much prefer them for me, the best endorsement we can get is a client who is a genuine client, who have come from no one other than what we do and how we do, and endorses our services. That's genuinely the best way we can ever get business.
And Real Estate Exposed, I'll close this question. Biggest mistake, Paul, you've ever made as a buyer's agent? What is a mistake that you don't want to repeat?
Trying to do too many things for too many people. So I did mention that and I mentioned this probably before we went on air, Tom, is the fact that we focus pretty much only on the investment space, is that trying to focus on owner-occupiers as well as everything else from development sites to renovation jobs and investments. Early in the piece, we probably thought we could do everything for everyone. I think now our pure focus is saying where can we invest to get the best outcome for people.
And as markets shift, you spoke about, and using Tom's analogy around the property clock, if we're past 12, markets change, more stock comes on market, property doesn't sell as easy. Real estate agents need to actually be salespeople rather than just order takers.
Yep.
When should real estate agents be building out their relationships with property managers, thinking about the market cycle we will go into? Might be 2 years away, 3 years away, 4 years away. Should they just call you up and say, hey, if I get stuff coming my way, do you want to have a first look at it?
And this is the hardest part I find, mate, is that we've bought in markets which are stone cold to a red hot and everything in between. And the irony is that the agents who we were working with, and we were buying stock off market before it was hitting anything, and realistically no one else would touch it anyway, and we're buying it what was deemed to be bargain basement prices at the time because we were the only people picking up the phone, compared to now where they won't pick up our phone calls nor will they return an email. It's a tough place to be, but I think if you are focused on what is your career, i.e. a 10, 15, 20, 30-year career in an industry which will be real estate, for me that's the key part, is that think about who you want to partner with and make sure they're not just someone you want to do deals with over a 6-month period of time. Think about who you want to work with in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and make sure you keep these people in your pocket, and not just for the sake of, hey, giving them a call and a kind handshake gesture, but it's trying to make sure that you're genuine with these people. Give them the honest opinion and say, unfortunately, mate, if you give me that offer, I'm going to have an offer that's going to be far more than that. So don't waste my time or the vendor's time. I tell you, this price will buy it. And if you give me this price, I think we'll get the deal done. But don't just give me, essentially just a bit more of the front landscape value, which is we know that's not going to get anything done. And that's been the tough part of our last 12 months of our industry as buyers agents, is the people we're working with, and we thought we forged 3-5 year relationships with, have all of a sudden not returning our calls. And well, what was the point in the last 3, 4, 5 years? But we've still got those agents who we know are excellent, still get listings, return our calls, speak to us the same way they spoke to us months and if not years ago. And we know that when the markets do get back to more of that equilibrium, we're able to still trade in the same way that we were back then as well.
Yeah. So, Tom, the rain's starting here, and we've been told we're up on the mid-north coast of New South Wales. The surf is absolutely abysmal, but we're being told that there's 100% chance that there's going to be 100 millimeters of rain in the next 72 hours, mate. So, to put that in the context of real estate, there's 100% chance that we're going to get a rate rise at some point soon.
I'm driving up towards your direction in about half an hour. So I'm going past Newcastle somewhere to speak at an event tomorrow morning first thing. So I'm going there tonight. Is the rain? Is it
just starting?
Just starting,
mate. I think unfortunately you're going to probably, if you're slow and steady, you'll be fine. But I don't think you're going to miss it somehow.
All righty, guys. Thank you so much. What are you going to do with the rain coming down? What are you going to do? Play Monopoly?
What are we going to do, Phil?
Oh yeah, we're Monopoly, Tom. That's what we do, mate. We love it. We live and breathe property. And I will also acknowledge today's the 11th Remembrance Day. So
yes,
recognition to all of our servicemen and women over many years. Mate, we're I'm sure we can find something to do here.
How many of you up there?
There's about 5 of us. It's just really a sort of ragtag sort of bunch of misfits who we've known each other for many years. So we sort of tried to surf this morning. Not much around. We've been fishing. We've been just doing what you do.
Guys, thank you so much. Paul, thank you for taking time and
thanks for having me, mate.
Joining us again. Phil, thank you so much again. Enjoy the remainder of what you got. 2 days left.
2 more days. We head back on Saturday. But Tom, as we round out, Paul, me and Tom will make a commitment to have a chat to you in 12 months' time. Give us your biggest property prediction right now, and we're going to bring it up in 12 months' time. And I don't want some vanilla thing. I want a good prediction.
Easy. You will unequivocally, and I won't say what I was about to say, but if I can't say this with conviction, I can't say that I wouldn't invest in it myself. Brisbane will be the number 1 performing major capital city in this country in the next 12 months, hands down.
Wow, doesn't surprise me you say that, because I just look at what a dollar buys you in Brisbane. the total deal, the weather, the lifestyle, the kind of real estate. And I think to myself, Brisbane represents good value. Still, even though prices have gone up, Brisbane represents good value. It's a far different place. When I started working for News Corp, going up to Brisbane every fortnight, the Courier Mail, it's a different place to what it is now. Now, a lot of the times, I could be in Brisbane in a street, in a restaurant precinct, where I think to myself, man, it's like I'm in Hunter Street in Sydney or something, right? You know, people, the way that people dress, the way that people act, it's changed. There's money there, there's optimism, there's work, there's resources, there's the Olympic Games. Let's not forget. All righty, gang. I started this session looking for my Apple pencil, and I'll be finishing this session looking for my Apple Pencil.
Well, maybe that's a metaphor for someone, Tom. I'll leave that one with you, mate.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, thanks a lot for your.
See you, mate.